friends here. We're getting together to ask questions about ET civilizations and things that are going here on Earth, and um, it's sort of an informal group tonight. So anybody that wants to get started, please feel free.
Are you familiar with the term Agartha?
No.
That is what some people call the civilizations that are in inner Earth.
Uh-huh.
Do you know anything about those kinds of beings?
A lot of rumor. It seems both from abductees and from or experiencers. I know there's like new terminology coming across the board. Um, there's been a lot of people who've talked about it. I don't know of anybody that's actually been able to make contact with those beings. Personally, I know there are people that have written books about them and tried to find their civilizations and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've wanted to go to Mount Shasta quite a bit just to go poking around. I've never taken the time to do that, myself. But I do believe there's probably some underground civilizations that are living here.
So why Mount Shasta in particular?
I heard the Lemurians ended up going there. But there's also like the Atlanteans went somewhere else. There's a lot of underwater bases too, from what I understand. There's a lot of underground bases, but I heard there's a lot of undersea type structures as well. I mean, there's people coming here from all over the place.
Undersea as in water?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, question. What can we in the United States do to help clean up Earth? I mean, just a general, we all do our own small things like recycle and stuff, but is there something as a group that we could do?
I've been hearing them talking more and more lately about, the environment's always like number one priority. Because without a planet to live on, we don't have much left. But they seem to have a lot more concern lately over our detachment towards each other. They're concerned a lot about how we treat each other and how we've become more and more dysfunctional overall. One of the things that they've been talking to me a lot about is trying to get to where we, like the workshops we're going to be having. We've got a couple scheduled in this month and then another one next month. And they seem to want to speak with more people on a sort of an informal way. And I think they're wanting to make the next level for contact. I really do at this point. It's just that's the way it's sounding lately. But I think they're really concerned about our violent tendencies. Not so much because they're afraid of us, but more that they're concerned that we're just treating each other so badly and not working as a unit. They really have that's how they run their societies. They all sort of work for the common good. We don't do a whole lot of that. We're still stuck on, me, and trying to get personal profits and stuff like that instead of working together and finding out what's good for the common good and working in that direction. They tend to talk about that more than anything else these days.
Okay, when you say they want more contact to them personally, with
Yes.
here.
Excuse me. Yeah, and to be honest with you, I've sort of heard more. There's going to be more sightings. There's going to be more contact with human beings, and that has sort of taken place. But it really didn't ramp up as much as I thought it was going to, say in the early part of the millennium. But just by the way things are sounding and by the way they're talking lately, it sounds like they're going to ramp things up again more than what they did previously.
So when they want personal contact, is that individually with certain humans, or are they going to do any kind of group contact?
It should be both, and it depends on what kind of groups get together. That's always been an issue where there are people like in the group that aren't quite on the same level of receiving the contact, and sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it does. From what I understand, it sounds like there's going to be a lot more of that, and there's going to be a lot more sightings. But there should be a lot more people having more direct contacts, and having more interesting things happen around them that they're trying to explain and understand.
Okay, another question. You are going to do a workshop explaining how we can not talk but communicate with extraterrestrials.
Mm-hmm.
The
More on a telepathic level, yes.
My question would be, why don't they show up at your workshop?
I've always been told when the time is right, that'll happen.
Okay, so all we can do is go to the workshop and hope?
Well, the workshop is not so much about expecting to see somebody show up at the front door as much as it is trying to make, a contact. And then, things can happen after that. You get a lot of people together who can talk with them. It was my understanding years and years ago they had a thing on the George Norrie show where it was like a Friday night or something. They didn't have any guests scheduled or anything. They had open mic all night long. And they were talking about the whole audience, try to focus your telepathic abilities on talking to them and calling them, and let's see if they'll do any sightings or whatnot. And there were a lot of people that were saying that they were seeing unusual things. But, as soon as I heard people calling to them, I just wondered how many people were listening to their response telepathically. We can yell all we want, but we need to be listening and paying attention to what they're telling us as well.
Okay, I see what you mean. In other words, we need to listen
Mm-hmm.
for them to give us...
They want us to open our abilities.
Okay. Well, on one time when I was over at the beach, I did automatic writing, and they did come to me in the automatic writing,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably need to do that more often.
Automatic writing is a great way to communicate with them.
Okay.
There's something about writing things out. You could be at a computer or doing it longhand, and there's just something about that focus that goes on. I really wish I knew more about how it works, and that's something I would like to see science dedicate more time and effort to, is finding out just how it works. And that's why I want to talk about it more often, too, so that we can share notes and compare just what we're doing, so that we can figure out all sort of, why doesn't this work and why does this work? Why can't I force this and why does this come easily? You know what I mean? So I'd like to learn more about that. It would be really nice if we have more of a scientific effort from, people in the know.
Braden talks about how there's we have all these waves of energy all around us, and so that's a telepathic communication is a type of wave of energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agree with you that there should be research done
Mm-hmm.
for that particular, because it's a, what would you call it, a vibrational level perhaps?
Mm-hmm.
It's like tuning into the radio. You have a certain...
Right, right.
So that's interesting.
The ETs tell me that we will put more, shall I say, a more excited effort toward research when we can measure the phenomena better. When we have a better way of reading a person's aura or reading a person's vibration or frequency, as it were.
Malie told me, a couple days ago that she is recognizing my signature. And I knew what she was talking about because I read I don't know which ETs, but they were talking about that each person or ET has a signature. It's their vibrational level and their, I want to say somewhat personality, but yet it's all part of the energy level. So I understood what she was telling me. She can distinguish me from other people because she sees my signature level. And so I assume that that's kind of what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it
Sure.
is what you're talking about.
I mean, even like people that are like married for a long time, they finish each other's sentences. They can tell which each other's thinking. You become accustomed to another person's frequency or vibration. So yeah.
Yeah, in other words, we already know it and do it. We just
Yes.
don't have terminology to say it.
That's one of the big problems too. When people get together, we're all like, "Well, we don't really have the words. Here's how it kind of feels." We do the best to try to put words to it, but I mean, we really don't have those words, and we're still working on trying to, come up with them, and we'll get there.
Okay. I want to say, okay, who's going to help us? But we have to help ourselves. So I guess.
They're talking a lot about listening to our inner guidance, and to not let other people tell us how to think so much anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, they're really big on that, and that's why instead of advising me to help people and tell them what their path is doing, they would rather have me help them to see their own path and work it through on their own. They want that saturation point where more people are doing it. The 100 monkey phenomenon, as it were.
There is no such thing.
No, I know. For me, it's more of an idea of saturation.
Yes.
When you get to that 51% or whatever, where humans can be stubborn, where we can have a 90% of them doing one thing, and there's still 10% going, no, we're not going to do it that way. But still, I think we need to get to that saturation point where there's a lot more love being passed around and less hatred and prejudice and those kind of ugly things that we have circulating a lot.
Is there any effort to inspire a philosophy to help the human mind understand when the ego goes off the rails? For instance, one thing I noticed that people don't have or are not educated in a self-evaluation or questioning
Right.
their own reactions or questioning their own thoughts. Years ago I had a teacher that taught me to separate what I think from what I feel. And so I watch a lot of conversations go on in group discussions. Well, how do you feel about that? And I'm thinking in my head, what do you think about it? What you think is different than what you feel. And many times people have a visceral reaction, that's an emotional reaction, without doing a self-check and saying, why am I having this eruptive kind of thing I want to lash out?
Right.
Is there any kind of plan or agenda? This kind of information already exists. It's already available. I've been studying the ego stuff for probably 20 years.
Yeah.
But other people...
Ego and arrogance stands in the way of a lot of things.
Yeah. But other people, that may not be the information that will work for them. So we need something to wake people up to actually see how the ego sabotages our greatness.
Right.
Is there any kind... what I'm asking, is there any kind of plan or an inspirational thing to help us wake up to that fact?
Personally, I'm noticing more and more of the telepathic type of communication as opposed to the empathic that comes into the emotional well. I think a lot of our stuff that we get that hurts our ego comes in here, and like you say, we don't process it well enough in the thinking centers where we get enraged or whatever and then act upon that before ever really processing it through. So I think that is part of their ideas of even opening up more telepathic centers, is to see more honesty quickly so that you can process it more efficiently without giving the rage a chance to really take hold and stuff like that. There's a lot of people on the planet right now, and we're living very, very close together like we never have. But yet, on the other hand, we're becoming more and more detached through technology. So it's causing a whole lot of new sort of emotional interactions with people. I mean, we've always had problems with megalomania and arrogance and things like that, but we're seeing things on a personal level, like the just random shootings that go on and stuff like that. We're seeing a lot of instant reactions to things that we're feeling negative. And yeah, we need a lot more caring from each other. We need a lot more understanding up here instead of just feeling it here and then reacting to it. I agree with what you're saying.
You know who Russell Brand is?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, he has a show on FX Brand X, and he had a person that did a study one time on psychopaths. And his research found that 1 in 100 people is a psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something that has happened to the brain of that psychopath where they don't have compassion, they don't have understanding. And if there's 1 in 100, that's far too many.
Yeah, it really is when you're talking about
Those
hundreds
people-
of millions and billions of people on the planet.
Those people
Yeah.
need healing of the mind.
Yeah.
They really do. I don't know what mechanism or philosophy or thought system could ever address that.
I know. We really need to work on mental health. You know, as we run into more and more recession type situations, you know, we just take more and more money away from understanding what's going on up here, and we've got more and more people running amok than ever before. And the medications aren't doing it; it's making people crazier. So, you know.
Medications aren't meant to heal anyway.
No, they're not.
They're just meant to numb,
Yeah.
so you're manageable.
We need more creative thinking going on, and not numbing out and not becoming complacent, and, you know. We need fewer sheeple. That's something that we need to do. People need to wake up.
How are they going to wake up?
Well, you got me. I try to slap people around now and then, try to wake them up, and it's not easy to do. Some people don't want to see. But, you know, some do. So I try to just go where I do what I can, where I can, and encourage everybody to do the same.
I'd like to add that I see commercials on TV, to me, are now reflecting more love. It's hard to explain. It's just that you have to look at them and kind of watch them and see. I just see that there's a conditioning, only it's a conditioning of taking care of families, caring about each other. I just see that in commercials more and more.
I think there's a huge push now towards green living and just loving the planet that we live on. And I think that alone is going to heal our world a great degree. If everybody's doing it a little bit, that's a whole lot.
Yes.
You know, and like you say, 1 in 100 may be a psychopath, but, you know, we got a few in every 100 too that's really awesome. And they're great at sharing the light and showing lots of love and sharing and you know, getting other people involved and inspired. And, you know, we need to encourage those people.
Along the line of psychopaths and mental disability, a lot of the foods that we eat, the things that come out of the ground, and the ground is basically sterile, so the plants are living off of chemical fertilizers and sprays and all that, so these foods really aren't whole like they used to be when the ground was alive. So I think that there's also that side of this whole, cancers and the mental thing, where people's bodies become imbalanced to the point where their brains go haywire or something else goes haywire, and so I don't know if you want to address that.
They talk a lot about whole foods, especially the Pleiadians. They're really big into it. Now, some of the other ones will actually say, you know, that some synthetic things you can do, and you know, it can help with supplements and all that. But you know, I think that really we need to let thy food be thy medicine. Really, because it's just the best way to go. You know, it's everything we do with drugs is all damage control. You know, we need more preventative. You know, if we didn't have the problem in the first place, we wouldn't have to take care of it. It just seems logical to me.
Well, I think Europe outlawed a lot of the GMO food a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
We started this mess in the United States, and we're wanting to hold on to it real bad.
Well, the corporations want to hold
Yeah,
on to it, but
yeah.
it's the people. And I've noticed that Fred Meyer has a lot more organic food than they used to, and I could see that years ago when organic food was the thing to invest in.
Right.
If you were going to invest money. And now all the stores,
Mm-hmm.
even Safeway, who has very little, still have some organic
Yeah.
food.
And even though the organic prices are still higher than the other stuff, it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. It's not like
Yes.
10 times as expensive as it used to be, so
Yes.
we're doing good
But
there.
I'll put out the extra money
Yeah.
to go organic, just to feed the farmer who does that.
Right.
you know.
Yes.
And if I can't go completely organic, which sometimes I have issues with money that way, I'll go at least with raw products, and just try to stay away from the processed. You know, because every time, every stage of the process, when they make your processed food, they put a little bit more chemicals in, a little bit over on this shelf, and a little bit over here on this. You know, so by the time you end up with it, you're just, you're eating a box of chemicals.
Oh, I just learned on Dr. This guy is saying that he brought out these feathers and human hair. He says they process this stuff and throw it into bread to make it more light and, palatable.
Oh my gosh.
You know what they
And
make
I
gelatin
think-
out of, don't you?
What's that?
Gelatin?
Pixie.
Yeah,
Yeah, and horse tendons and
yeah.
all kinds of other things that are dried up and thrown into that little mixture. Yeah,
Right, yeah. Hot dogs are pretty bad news too.
yeah, yeah.
I think though, I read the paper almost every day, and I see and I cut out a lot of articles that from a ground level, people are taking care of other people a lot more than they used to. Now, it's hard to see those little things, but I think it's happening. It's just that it's coming slower than I think we all want it to come.
I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying it needs to be more encouraged. Because we do have, a lot of people like I'm noticing just like on social media. I don't know how much you guys are into it. I was really into it for a while and then said this is really kind of unusual. So I kind of stopped doing it for a while, but I know more and more people are just getting on there and saying really unkind things, and just posting any kind of little snitty thing that they want to people. And, that's,
Those are plants.
yeah, but
To ruin that kind of-
yeah, I just don't like that because it's nameless, spaceless. I can get on there and say something snarky and get away with it, and that's just bad manners.
That people are encouraged more and more if they own their own house or even rent and want to have a garden in their yard. It's people are encouraged to do that these days more and more.
I know. It was just a few years back. People were getting arrested for having front yard gardens. How crazy is that?
Well, my son has one every year now, and my other son, and he has a huge one over near the coast. I guess what I'm saying is that as things become, there's encouragement to do certain things.
Yeah. I'd love to see more people doing gardening because it's not just good to grow your own food, but you put energy and you exchange energy with the planet. And you get that going on a very big scale. What is it, like a couple hundred years ago, it was like 1 out of every 100 people or something worked in an office. Now it's like just the opposite. Most people are working in offices instead of tending their land. And it's good to see more and more people wanting to go back to that.
And my neighbor down the street, they have a garden every year, and he took some of his cucumbers over to Ducktail's restaurant, which isn't far away, as the owner of the restaurant wanted his cucumbers. So it's really more natural. That's good.
Yeah, I like hearing about stuff like that. And farmers markets, that's some of the greatest place to get food.
Popping up like mushrooms.
Yeah,
Especially
yeah.
when people who have big gardens, they need some place to sell their stuff, so.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's nice, even if you just go down and exchange your stuff for other stuff. That's, bargaining. That's the way it should be done.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm a fan of the barter system.
I have a question. The Pleiadians, what kind of educational system do they have for their children?
Funny you should bring that up. Because I was just talking to them today, and they're telling me that our education system's going down fast.
And what does that mean? Does that mean we're going to recreate a different kind of
Yeah,
education
well,
system?
they're saying it's going to be, unlike anything we've ever had. It's going to be a total renovating. I mean, the schools are just not able to keep the kids safe anymore, and they're trying, and the cops are running their drills, and they're trying to, fight the psychos with guns, but, they're still killing people. And, don't necessarily want to advocate too many things, but if I had a kid right now that was of school age, I would have them on the internet. I wouldn't be sending them to a public school. And that's just my own personal feelings. I know there's a lot of other people that kind of feel the same way. They don't know what to do. They have to work, so they can't necessarily stay at home and do homeschooling. But at the same time, there's a massive movement right now to just realize that the schools are just not serving our kids. They're not educating them
Well,
even the way they used to.
I've seen some programs. There's a name for one guy that started a whole series of programs on the computer. And some teachers in some schools, they're doing a lot of work on the computers, and the teachers are encouraging it. It looked really good what I saw.
Right.
But I know that's not true of all schools. And
Right.
You have to have money to set up a whole computer system.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. The funding's got to come from somewhere, at least in our system where things need to be funded. The Pleiadians send their kids mostly to specialized schools. As kids grow and they become interested in one thing or another, they send them to places where they can learn things that are specialized to their particular needs or abilities, so to speak. So if they're gifted in music, they'll go to a place that emphasizes music. They're learning everything else, but they're more emphasized. And if the people are faster or slower, they're accommodated that way. That's one of our biggest problems right now is everybody's pushed into one mold, everybody's going at the same rate, and not everybody learns at the same rate, even well into adulthood. So the system never really worked to begin with. So, but yeah, they're saying that just because our schools are sort of just getting too violent and stuff, that we're going to see the end of how we take care of education.
Okay, let me ask you about the Zeta Reticuli. What kind of educational system do they have?
They have more of a one parent to one child, and they're specialized in parenting.
How many different ET civilizations have you interacted with?
3.
3.
I've tried to go a couple more, but I've had limited success with that.
So it's the Pleiadians,
The Arcturians and the Zetas.
Can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the Arcturians? I don't know much about those.
I'm still working on that.
Okay.
They're energy beings, the ones that I contact, and I'm sure there's some kind of futuristic thing. I know other contactees have talked to me about having Arcturian contacts, and they're corporeal.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'm not saying that those people aren't right or anything. I'm just saying who I'm in touch with is a little bit different. And they're mostly space-bound. They don't live on planets. They use planetary atmospheres to nurse their young. But mostly they live in space, and they live off radiation from stellar, stars.
Okay, like the ships that are out there doing stuff with our sun.
Yeah. See, I don't know a whole lot of all that stuff as far as some of that
YouTube
conspiracy stuff, but yeah, I know.
There's very
I haven't
interesting
kept up on a
things.
lot of stuff, and here's my thing, and we were just talking about this earlier. I have ignored a lot of the videos that have been coming across my desk because so many people anybody with a decent PC can make a pretty realistic looking video. So I kind of went away from it. I used to watch everyone that would come down the pike because, you really had to have some serious equipment back in the 70s or whatnot in order to make a decent, video, and they could tell right away if they were being hoaxed. But nowadays, a lot of the videos are being hoaxed, so I kind of got away from watching them. But I will admit I should get caught up again because there's some things I've been falling behind with. And some of the shows that we were talking about, I've been starting to watch those a little bit more often. If nothing else, just to watch what they're reporting in the mainstream media.
Even if it's a false thing, you can kind of sense it.
Yeah, and it's good to keep up on things.
I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to know what the lies are to figure out the truth.
Exactly. There's still a lot of disinformation out there, and it's done to try to keep us confused. So that's why I encourage communication, so that we could try to figure out what's what.
I got a question about the Antarctic.
Mhm.
The beings that you're in contact with, Have you ever talked to them about anything going on in the Antarctic itself? Because there's the ancient ruins that are under it, and there's even evidence that there is even a crashed saucer that's near the Antarctic itself. And that's something I have a question. I'd like to sort of know if, you know, possibly if you could even ask them that and find out what particular alien race actually has done a lot of things with the Antarctic area. There's the one island that used to be where it was actually where you could go to Google and you could see this huge, looked like a saucer type craft that was actually embedded into the ice itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just all of a sudden disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And no longer, and something that I was able to see is one of the bases that are in the Antarctic, I think it's Niemeyer Station, which is the German base. The strangest thing happened is something that I was getting actually live feeds from it, but they'd be somewhat delayed,
Mm-hmm.
where I'd actually see like the weather conditions, and you'd see the storms, and you'd see how the sun would cross, and you know, even though they're that far down there. Well, there was a time that I actually seen individuals that were outside the actual station itself that were in radiation suits, and they were talking to some type of either entity, being, or what. It's hard to say because he looked like a man in black, and they were pointing to the sky, and they had like some kind of map or something that they were looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those things that the actual real true feed, meaning I actually got that off of that, and then later it came out on YouTube that someone had actually captured that, and then there was questions about where was there possibly some kind of interaction with some kind of alien race or beings or something that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a question I have. And then one other thing too is how do the races that you've had interaction with, how do they reward their people or their beings for what they do? Like we have the basic needs of needing shelter and food and clothing and such. Do they have some kind of system where they all basically share amongst what their natural resources are, and in other words, no one goes uncared for? Are they like that?
Mm-hmm.
To where
Very much so.
Yeah. Let's see it like almost.
But
like,
there are those who excel in their fields that definitely get a bigger apartment or nicer surroundings or whatever. I mean, there's still ambition, and
Okay.
there's rewards the same as they are. I mean, they have creature comforts just as we do. But there isn't as much disparity between who's got the wealth and who doesn't. So there's a lot to go around. To answer your first questions, the best impression I'm getting from the Antarctic area is that is old. There's a lot of ruins and stuff down there. I don't know if there's a real active base within the continent itself, but I do know there's some underground bases around the continent.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I heard Lisa Royal talk about when she channeled Sasha, I think it is, from the Pleiades, that it was like they don't use money, but it's like this lady makes socks and this lady designs houses, and they exchange something similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
So is that basically they don't use money?
No, they don't.
Money like we do.
They don't have cash. Now, I don't think they're dealing with kind of debit cards either, but I kind of think in my own head that there's got to be some kind of credit system or something so that you can keep everything equal or whatever. If you're trying to, share the right amount of socks for the right amount of whatever it is that you're trading for, you know what I mean? And I don't really know what their system is. They've kind of tried to show me, but I see definitely a distinct lack of cash. And I don't really see like plastic debit cards or something like that. I don't know how they keep track.
Well, tell them to make it clearer.
I've asked, actually, I have.
The Zetas. What kind of system system do they have as far as, I don't wanna say money, but, you know, value for value, I mean, how do they exchange values?
You know, those guys are a lot more efficiently minded and orderly minded. Um, they have things that are just so much down to a science. I know there's somebody counting the beans on that planet because they're just so. And I'm sure. I mean, they try to issue the same amount to everybody.
Okay.
You know, but yeah, I think it would be. I feel like the Pleiadian system is a lot more relaxed, where you could trade something that's of a different value, and it's not really considered such a something you'd have to, you know, necessarily compensate for. Whereas the Zetas are more likely to be, okay, you've got this at X amount, and then we've got to give them the same amount in some form or fashion.
Well, that makes sense because, you know, they eliminated emotions and then they realized that they went too far.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they're very, I want to say accurate. They're very,
They're very intellectual and they're very scientifically minded. The Pleiadians are a lot more spiritually minded.
Yes.
And that's why they would forgive a debt that was out of balance because, to them it would not be worth worrying about.
Okay.
You know, that's just something you just, give to the ether and, karma takes care of stuff like that.
Also, the Zetas, I know, are very concerned about us polluting our planet.
Mm-hmm.
Because of what they did to their,
Mhm.
actually they have, I don't quite understand how many planet star systems the Zetas have.
Well, they started with the one that they messed up.
But was that one planet?
As far as I know, yeah. And they didn't colonize anywhere else until after they got some of that stuff put back on track.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, they were back above ground and...
Well, that's what, I don't know if everybody understands that they had to go underground
Yeah.
to live. And then,
for generations.
and then they also could not reproduce children.
Right.
Because their heads grew very large, right?
That's what some people say. Yeah, a lot of people just say pollution and stuff made them sterile.
Okay.
It's likely the males went sterile first.
Okay, well that brings
And then,
back.
and before the issue of whether heads could fit through a birth canal or not, a lot of the women were not carrying the babies to term. That became a much worse issue.
Okay.
And I heard here a few years back that we're starting to have issues like that here on this planet, that a lot more women are not making it to 9 months anymore. It's almost a given that they have birth at 7 or 8 months now.
Also, I've heard that a lot of males are impotent. They're not producing the sperm like
Right.
they used to. The other thing is, I read a book called Past Lives, Future Lives. A lady in England who saw her future lives as well as her past lives.
Mm-hmm.
And she said there are a whole lot less people here in a few hundred years from now. And when I wrote her on Facebook to explain exactly why that was happening, she said it was pollution. And I don't know for sure that she mentioned males, but I think it's probably more than female, as far as, it's more male not producing the sperm that they used to.
Right.
And that's due
Lower
to the
sperm
fight of
counts
the
and stuff.
pseudoestrogens from plastic and bottles that you drink in the water, that you're drinking in that water.
Oh, yeah.
It's one aspect, but there's so many.
I mean, it's a huge contributing factor, though.
Oh, okay.
Yes, the pseudoestrogens that are in the plastic that leaches into the water that we drink.
Well, and I saw in the newspaper a year or two ago where Russia was encouraging people to have children because they only had 157 million people in all of Russia.
I know, I was shocked to learn
Yeah,
that.
I remember hearing that. That's like, half
And
of what we got.
are increasing, and we
No,
have
we're not.
310 million. Yeah, but part of it's the immigrants. That's why. It's
Yeah,
not because
yeah.
we're producing more kids. It's we're getting more immigrants.
Yeah. I heard that Latinos are now the biggest ethnic group in California. They outnumber white people and everybody else. Not all combined, but they're now the biggest ethnic group.
Your land that we took from Mexico.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa Royal isn't the only person that has seen into the future. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Hank Wesselman. He's,
I've heard of him, yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, I saw him at a prophets conference.
anyway, he's seen into the future, and just like Lisa Royal saw that there's hardly anybody.
Actually,
Yeah.
it wasn't Lisa
I've seen those
Royal,
kind
it
of
was
visions too. I don't really see like really massive like disasters going on to cut the population, but we definitely have it. We're headed for a cutback.
Well, but it doesn't mean that's on this planet. It could be in another Earth in another dimension.
It sure
that they're
could.
seeing.
It sure could because I mean, look, I'm not going to get into too many who's doing what, but a lot of people have been manipulating the timeline, both in governments and outside of governments. So we've got a lot of alternate timeline possibilities going on now too that are interacting in ways that were unpredicted. Go figure.
Why are ET? Of course, this could be all over the universe. I don't know, but why are ETs? Probably not ETs. We would be ETs to them if we were visiting their planet.
Mhm.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
What is the reason they want to help us?
I ask them that a lot too, and a lot of it is they say that they're just, we're part of the human galactic family. That's one. There's a lot of other humanoid types that are not being allowed to interfere at this time because they're trying to help us get our heads together.
Why is that important?
I'm not exactly sure. Now, with the Zetas, there's so much controversy over who they are and where they come from, and
But the Zetas don't want us polluting our planet so
True.
bad to have what happened to them.
But one of my things is there's still the jury is still out as to whether they even come from the future. They could be from here.
Okay.
But I've asked him, if that's the case, why would you come back in time to alter things? You're just going to, how much can you alter a timeline before you create another timeline? So if that's what they're doing, they're on some pretty sketchy ground. I hope they know what they're doing. But
So is that what Bashar is talking about? That a number of, I don't know us, but
see that kind of gets confusing to me too. If the Zetas change the whole timeline and they don't have the problems that they had to begin with about reproducing, then what happens to the Essassani?
That's right. By the way, the Essassani is a hybrid planet and civilization.
And why have I not heard of this before? I've
Oh
not heard of this one.
yeah, that's Bashar's from there. He's from the future.
I have a DVD.
Who's Bashar?
Bashar is channeled by Daryl Anka,
Okay.
and Bashar is an Essassani. He's
Mhm.
a hybrid
Mhm.
from the future.
Mhm.
Very high level, and he
Mm.
answers questions.
Mhm.
I've been to a couple of Daryl's workshops.
Mhm.
Anyway, it's
He's an interesting character. I highly recommend you checking him out.
Okay.
yeah. Put Bashar into the computer, Bashar,
Okay.
and by the way, when he talks, it can be very offensive because he talks really fast and really loud. I don't know. how to
Yeah,
say
he's
it.
very emphatic, and his accent is very weird. And yeah, he's
He's not from around here then.
no,
No.
Okay.
no,
Okay.
And he's Daryl is a trance channel.
Okay.
So
When I first, RJ introduced me to this many years ago.
yeah,
And he gave me some old audio tapes. And when I listened to him, Bashar, I went, I'm not going to listen to this guy. He's so irritating. But then I thought, I'll give him a chance. And the more I listened to him, the more I realized that he really had incredibly wonderful information
Yeah.
for us.
I read a couple of his books before I actually saw him or heard him, so I was pretty much sold on the information before I saw the man.
Oh, his book, there's one book out. I don't know if there's other books now, but there was the one book called Bashar. You gave it to me.
Yeah.
It's called Bashar.
And then there was another one too, I
Absolutely
think.
Fabulous book.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
worth if you can buy it, it's worth it.
And he talks about the Essassani and how they live and their whole
Yeah.
civilization. And
Yeah.
he talks that they live in city ships, that nobody lives on the ground, that their whole planet surface is like a park.
That's what Riley Martin talks about.
Mm.
He lives in the ship is about a 40-mile
Mm-hmm.
size ship.
Yeah, that's the
and
kind of
lives
thing
in
Daryl
Saturn,
describes.
the rings of Saturn, because it mines the minerals. And there's something like 7 different civilizations on that ship that work together to make, you know, everything happen that they need to do. Because each different race has kind of like their speciality, you know.
Mm-hmm. There's a whole
Engineering,
lot going
doctors,
on in
all
our
that.
solar system.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
When you talked about the Arcturians, to have children, they need a planet's atmosphere?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do they do that? I mean, do they, I mean, they're energy beings, so
Right.
how do they get in our planet's
The
atmosphere?
planets that they use are barren. They don't have any carbon-based stuff growing on it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
The one that I have in my vision is sort of a yellowish lime green. It's kind of an ugly color, and it's got a real thin atmosphere. And they just sort of place the young into the atmosphere, and they're sort of suspended there until their gestation is done. And then they pop out like almost fully grown. The growing period between birth and adulthood is like really super short.
Wow, that's interesting.
So the plant acts like sort of an incubator?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a good term.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have a question. About, oh gosh, 2005 maybe, saw what I thought was a jet airliner, and I'm pretty sure it turned out to be something else. Daytime, it just disappeared. And I got to thinking, well, did they know I was looking at them and decided they didn't want me to see them anymore, or, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've had similar experiences, and I've asked the same question, and I thought that too. Well, did you change or put your cloaking device on because I saw you or what? And they said, well, you weren't the only one that saw us.
Yeah.
Was the response I got.
Yeah.
So I interpret that as being, they were not just hiding from me, and maybe they weren't hiding from me at all.
Right.
But yeah, there is an issue with keeping cover, so to speak.
Do they actually hang out in the clouds?
I was going by Mount Shasta one time, and I was thinking to them about that. And there was a lot of lenticular clouds in the sky that day, and they're all pretty much circular. And I was asking, and they were giving me an affirmation of yes to that. But I also saw one that was a rectangle with its corners cut off. Now that was completely unlike any lenticular thing I've ever seen in any picture or anything. So if that was hiding a ship, the sides were very, very straight. And it was really odd. I was like, So I left the area going,
Now, I have a question then. I thought my dad saw one back in 1931. He was out in the pasture on a ranch. And he looked up at the sky, and here was this huge UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad never lied, so I knew he was telling me the truth. Okay, he looked down at the horse because the horse would stumble sometimes. Looked up and it was gone. So my question is, do they change dimensions? Do they change vibrational level? How are they seen 1 minute and not seen the next?
Yeah, and I wonder about that too, and I think it is a dimensional shift. And you hear a lot about the ships, especially the cigar-shaped craft that are real long,
Yeah.
and they'll change size as they fly. So I think that is a dimensional vibration or shifting, or maybe they're getting ready to make some kind of a jump. Because a lot of times you see those people say that they see them, and as they're changing their shape and size, they're actually moving faster. So they think they're maybe getting ready to go through a gateway of some kind or something.
Okay, so now they deliberately show themselves at times for certain groups of people or whatever.
Oh, I've heard that a lot from a lot of contactees, how some people can see them and then somebody standing right next to him can't.
Okay, that my brother sees them, and he said he saw one over at a stoplight in Portland, and he said nobody else could see it. It was right there.
Right, right.
But nobody else was looking to see it.
That's why I've never seen anything. I don't have the sight.
Well, I think Monty's he's seen a lot of UFOs.
I haven't seen anything.
He has a vibrational level, perhaps. He has something where he is actually. You do too, because you see them all the time too.
Yeah,
Oh, I hate you. I
I
believe, but I've never
I
seen
just seen one. You know, they got cameras on most all the major mountains in the northwest here.
Right.
So I recently went to the site for Mount Adams because, you know, interesting
So
place.
you can actually.
Oh,
go
yeah.
and see it.
And believe it or not, their camera actually caught some type of object that looked like a stretched out worm in the sky.
Right. There's all kinds of crazy stuff flying around Mount Adams.
Yeah. And
Yeah, if you ever want to go camping sometime and see some stuff, go up there. Almost everybody does when they go up there. There's a lot of what they call power-ups where, you know, a
Oh,
bright
yeah,
light
well,
will
that's
start
where
coming
the
on and get brighter and
We've
brighter.
been on Gilliland's property and we've
Oh,
seen
have
stuff.
you? Yeah.
Well, it's just sitting there and all of a sudden.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
interesting stuff that goes on up there.
Mm-hmm.
And we were, a friend of mine was, we were going through, we found a lava tube in a place we probably weren't supposed to be. It was kind of like a national forest or something like that. And we got a lot of orbs and stuff like that inside there on our photographs and stuff. So
Yes.
it's a very
Yes.
magical, interesting area.
Yeah, I was watching this thing in Argentina. They were exploring this Mayan cave or something, and it was like a really deep drop. They were trying to explore it, and they took a picture, and they didn't say anything, but there's all kinds of orbs that were reflected on that picture. I mean, there's no light there, you know.
yeah.
Lots of,
Absolute
just
darkness,
thick
Right.
orb things.
energy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
go ahead.
there's been a lot of disappearances in national parks.
Boy.
Yes, I've heard that on
Of
the
people?
Terrestrial show.
Yes, with no explanation of where they go. It's kind of like the Bermuda Triangle thing where people fly in and
You're telling me this is like more than what's been happening in the last 10, 20 years?
Oh, it's been happening for more than that. It's been
Well,
happening
yeah.
the
I know, but I
last
mean, are the
50
numbers
years.
higher than what they used to be is what I'm
no,
asking?
it's just come to my attention.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know about
Okay.
it. I said, oh my God, I'm never going to national park again.
Well,
Is there any,
but they
do we
also
know what's
find,
going on with that?
occasionally they find people that are actually dead, but they don't
Yeah.
understand because they're like miles away from where they should have been.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
I know there's been lots and lots of stories. I've never had any kind of experience like that myself that I can remember.
But, the ETs
but
won't
yeah,
tell
there's-
you?
Well, the thing is, there's a lot of conjecture. Even amongst the ETs, sometimes they don't always give me a straight answer on certain things.
Okay.
Sometimes they won't give me any answer at all because they're just not willing to tell me.
But you know, that really ticks me off, and I just tell you why. If you're asking the question, you're ready to know the answer.
I argue that point all the time.
I mean, if
But yeah,
somebody-
there's certain things they just won't
yeah, if I'm in a
respond.
conversation with someone and they'll make a statement, but they haven't asked the question, I don't give them the answer because they're not ready to hear the answer.
Right.
They haven't asked the question.
Right.
I figure if I'm asking the question, I want to know the answer.
Mhm.
I know when I was a little child, I would question my mother, and I would say I want to know why, and she would say because I told you so.
Oh
And
God, I
just
hated that when my
irritated
mom would
that,
tell me
you know
that.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I asked the question because I really wanted to understand
Right.
the
Right.
reason for that.
I was the kind of kid that always asked why, but it wasn't because I was trying to be annoying. I really like you. I was just curious and I
You wanna
wanted to know.
understand it.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you something. When I do my automatic writing,
Uh-huh.
occasionally they will say to me, "It is not time for you to know that."
Oh,
Right.
bullshit.
Well,
If I'm asking
You
the
can
question,
tell
it's
them
this
that.
time.
maybe they're not ready to admit.
No, I think that
That
they don't.
ticks me off.
I think that it could change what I do in the future, and they don't want me to know. In other words, I have free will,
Right.
and they are very careful about what they want to tell me
Yeah.
because I can make a change. So anyway, that's my theory is that it happens to me too.
Mhm.
Well, I
Um,
can see both points of view. I mean, they both seem reasonable.
Well, could it also be that maybe they don't know all the answers either? You know?
Yeah, they do.
You think they do?
They know. They know.
Well, I think there's a whole lot of politicking going on, even amongst them, because there's the Association of Worlds or Federation or whatever you want to call it, and some people will talk about. I mean, some of my contacts have often said that's not our race that's doing that, and so they won't necessarily tell me what's any more details because it's not their place to say. At least that's their excuse. Which sometimes I don't always buy it because I'm like that. I really I don't like having just silence when I ask a question, but I get it quite often.
True answer.
Okay, I have a question. Bigfoot.
Bigfoot.
Oh.
Bigfoot is quite often, UFOs are seen near Bigfoot quite
Yeah.
often if they're actually seen. So there's a connection, and I've read a book that had a whole chapter about UFOs and Bigfoot.
Mhm.
He talked about Bigfoot the whole book, but he was talking about UFOs. So, have they told you anything about that?
They have told me that Bigfoot does exist. Now, they have been real sketchy, at least with me, about admitting that they're having a whole lot to do with them any more than they would any other animal. Now, this is just the people that I'm dealing with. I have a hard time getting the Zetas to talk about cows. They will to some degree.
But they're the ones
Are you
that,
talking about the mutilated
Mhm.
cows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've asked a lot of questions about stuff like that because okay, well, if they're being blamed, if the ETs are being blamed for doing it, I go ask them and say what's up. But they only tell me very limited things about the mutilations.
well, but part of that's because they're doing all this research for genetic,
I hear a lot of that too. Yeah.
and that's,
And I don't think the Bigfoots are being like abducted or contacted like they are with the human beings. And I'm not saying that they're smarter or dumber or anything like that. I just there seems to be a disparity as to who's really on the Bigfoot program. Does that make it sound better or more
Well,
understanding?
didn't we talk a long time ago about that the Zetas were using Bigfoot to collect plants or something for?
I've heard that
ETs?
theory. I don't remember hearing that from any of my contacts, but I've heard other contactees say that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But then again, there's people that say that human beings were a slave race at one point, serving them back in ancient times and stuff like that. So there's a lot of those kind of theories, and I tend to sit on them for a while because I just don't know if it's entirely true, and don't want to actually tell somebody else they're wrong because I could just easily be wrong myself on certain things, because there's certain things that I'm really interested in and certain things that I just haven't been. The Bigfoot question is real interesting though, because I smelled him one time. I'm sure he was close because when we went by there, that smell was gone, and we were actually looking for him because we'd heard some people had sighted him up there
Where?
near Mount Adams.
Oh, okay. And you could smell him?
Yeah,
Then
I mean
when you went back later, there was...
yeah, it was gone. And I actually told the guy I was with that it smelled like we were near a really unclean porta potty that needed to be dumped.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
when
I know, they don't...
when we went back by there, that smell was gone. And as far as I know, there was no utility trucks or anybody taking care of the porta potties up there that day.
Well, my daughter-in-law's father...
And we went by there just 15, 20 minutes later. It's not like anybody had a long time to clean that up. So that smell
Okay.
passed through.
Okay.
Pictures where they've seen Bigfoot and with the ships and right in the doors of the ships and such. But I haven't seen any of those photographs.
My daughter-in-law's father lives, as you know, up near Bickleton, small town, out in the country. And he said that one time when he was clearing some land next to the house he was building, he felt like something was looking at him, which is the normal for Bigfoot. If you can feel it when they're looking at you. Okay. But he also said that he smelled a smell like a transistor radio, if you can imagine that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he did was he got his wife and got his gun, and he had his wife sit out there with a gun just in case he got attacked. But he really felt that that was Bigfoot. So my question is, you were talking about the smell, and you know, it would be like a huge porta potty, only worse. But, and he said it smelled like a transistor radio. So is that, do they have different smells, or do you know?
I would imagine they do.
Maybe different depending on which Bigfoot it is.
Yeah, or what they've been exposed to, or...
Okay. Anyway, the smell went away, and the feeling of being looked at went away. But I know I have a T-shirt that says, I went to a Bigfoot conference up in, I think, Bellingham in 2005, and the T-shirt says, "Who's looking at who?"
Yeah.
So anyway, just wanted to add that information.
The smell of burning electronics can be a very pungent odor. So I could see how it could be compared to something like that, because that can be a real strong odor as well.
Well, and it was such a different odor for there, which means that it must have been a Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But what are they doing with something mechanical? I mean, a transistor smell burning is something mechanical.
Yeah.
It may just be how he's describing it, though. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I don't know. I wasn't there.
Maybe for the way he smells things, perhaps.
Everybody's got their own perspective on how they describe things, and sometimes we don't have the words for things, so people just sort of do their best.
Yeah.
Back in the 70s, I had the opportunity to go down to the Hopi Reservation, and a group of us, and
Where is that? In Northern California?
the Hopi Reservation
Oh,
is an area.
Hopi.
Yeah,
Oh,
Hopi.
I thought it was,
Yeah.
okay. I know where that is.
And one of the elders showed us a plaster cast of Bigfoot,
Mm-hmm.
and told us that he was a guardian of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my experiences.
Yeah, a lot of the Indian tribes do talk about Sasquatch, and
Yeah.
a lot of them talk about how they do things with the great spirits and whatever. I mean, depending upon which group you're talking to, but yeah. And there's sure a lot of plaster casts around, aren't there? You know.
So the question is why haven't they interacted with humans?
I don't know. Maybe they're just smarter than that,
In other
or
words,
fearful.
Well, they have. You just have to read the signs. I'll show you this picture later. I stopped my TV because when I first saw this picture, this image captured on my television, I couldn't even see it. And I looked and looked and said, "Oh my gosh, there it is!"
Oh, right.
But what it is, I think it was a guy in Canada. He's some kind of outdoor guy, and they're walking down this trail in the woods looking for Bigfoot. Here's interesting. Every so often, a tree is like this on that trail. That means don't go off the road. You know, you've got trees like this pointing to the road. Logs. Like this on both sides of the road. Get it? Don't go off the road. So they are communicating, you just have to read the signs. They found another structure where there was about like 6 or 7 logs made like a teepee, but it wasn't a perfect teepee thing.
Yeah.
And so what they did is they put on that structure, they put out some apples. And these guys went off and did their camping, and the next day all the apples that they put there were gone. And there's also a thing where Bigfoot will take a tree, pull it out of the ground, turn it upside down, and put a whole tree.
I've heard that too.
With the roots up. They're talking to you, and they're saying, "Don't come here."
Okay.
See?
Okay.
You just have to be able to read
Yeah.
the symbology.
Well, I know they like the organic apples. I heard that.
Mm-hmm. They like apples.
I've heard a lot of people say too that they get, they'll come and watch them, and then as soon as they notice that they're watching, they'll just walk away. And they don't always necessarily run away. They're just like, "Okay, you caught me watching you.
watch
I'm wandering
us."
off." Yeah.
Who's watching you?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's what happened to John. I mean, the Bigfoot was obviously there watching him, or he
Mhm.
wouldn't have felt that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's not something he would talk about to most people. But I told him about going to the Bigfoot conference, so
Mm-hmm.
he said, oh, I was an okay person to tell that story to. But anyway,
Those are the most interesting stories of all, the stories that nobody wants to tell, because they're not out to try to get attention or any of that kind of stuff. Usually they, are having enough problems having told the few people that they've told. So, well, I find those to be the best stories.
you mean the one I just told you?
Yeah, the ones that people are reluctant to tell.
Or reluctant to tell, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Have you ever asked questions about supposedly haunted places where people have what is termed a demonic experience,
Uh-huh.
and they get attacked and scratched and knocked around? I know we put words to it. Doesn't mean that's what it is. Have you ever asked the question about these things or these energy things that cause actual physical harm to human beings in those experiences? Have you ever questioned that?
A lot, because I can talk to ghosts too, and I've had a lot of experience with that kind of
See,
thing.
I don't know a ghost is what a ghost really.
I know,
call it
I'm
a
just
ghost,
using it for that.
but
Yeah.
what is it really?
Disembodied spirit, an energy being. When I was working on my past life stuff, I remembered some time of being after death. So I know there's some kind of plane there, and I even discovered that after. I mean, I've been dealing with disembodied spirits for a long time. The ones that are demonic, and the ones you see on TV on the ghost shows, and they're talking about all this. I wonder how much of that is exaggerated, just for dramatic effect and that kind of thing. Because I've never really run into anything that's that intense. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but I haven't run into it, and I don't know that many people who have that I've known. So the only real experience I have of it is what other people have talked about on the media.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you know how the media distorts things. So.
They do, but they don't totally.
Yeah, I know. So it's hard to tell where what's right and what's not. I don't think those real heavy demonic things are as common as most people think. And maybe if they are, they're being kept under lock and key by somebody who's more powerful psychic than me. I don't know. I don't know. But I have not had a lot of those types of experiences. And I've met a lot of ghosts. Yes.
I can honestly say I had an entity, whatever it was, a demonic spirit or some type of, it actually tried to choke me to death.
Really?
And that was back in Wisconsin. And it was at a family business we had, and it was at a motel. And there's also the UFO sighting that we had there too, and other things. So I can honestly say I actually felt very much so in the way that there was actually a pressure on me, and something that was actually just like if I did this right now,
right,
trying to kill me.
How did you get it stopped?
I pled the name of Jesus, and I rebuked it, and it went off.
Okay.
I've heard of things that'll stick around your house and feed off your negative energy. I mean, a lot of people have dealt with those kind of things.
Well, I met a guy that said he had experiences with ghosts, and he talked about the dead. And I said, oh, well, maybe it's sort of like the Long Island medium, where she brings messages from the people that have passed on to their loved ones. He said, no, I tell them they're dead. I try to convince them they're dead. Because they're dead and they don't know that they're dead.
Yeah, that has been the case sometimes.
So
I run into that as well.
That was an interesting discussion with him.
I'm sorry, Dixie, can you keep an eye on Lucky? Like, I don't want him to bother anyone. I've kept him in there for a while.
Yeah. Anybody have
Is
any
that
issues?
the cat?
Yeah.
Lucky the cat. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just, I've had him with me in there for
That's fine.
a few hours.
Yeah.
That's fine.
think he probably wants to go eat.
Well, anyway, if he bothers you, just tell me and we can bring him to my room.
Okay, all right, thanks, honey. So let me think if there's any other questions. I asked the one about the Bigfoot, that was important.
Just pause.
Ask the question again.
Okay. Have you inquired about where people and equipment that goes into the Bermuda Triangle, like?
Yeah, the most common answer I get is gateway. There's a gateway there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I my personal, just based on other things that I've heard from them and stuff, it seems like the vortexes and things are there. I have a feeling we're going to end up finding out how to use those as dimensional gateways or whatever for traveling. I do. Now, whether we're going to go through space or through time is another question, because I'm not really sure what they're going to do. But that's the feeling I have, is that we're going to use them as transport portals or something like that.
What about the Anunnaki?
Yeah, again, they're ancient race, most likely underground. I'm sure there's ones that are not here, and that there's ones that are here, like a base type situation.
Well, didn't they come here from another planet and they were here for a while?
Mm-hmm.
But they controlled us, right?
Yeah, I think that was one of the ones that was like they were. I think
They wanted us to mine their like gold.
Yeah.
The minerals, and they wanted us to be slaves. That was my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
I
supposedly they were going to come back, but we're too advanced now.
I don't know. My feeling is they didn't totally leave. And I have a feeling they could be fueling some of the craziness that we're dealing with now.
Fueling it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Rather than feeling it. Okay.
Yeah. There's definitely some races or forces. I'll throw that word in too, that are trying to keep things in a negative way. I mean, obviously, just look around, But it's like who's doing it and all that kind of stuff is kind of hard to pinpoint. There's a lot of theories.
But some of the channelings that I, read, they say that they have no more power. They have or very little power left to do anything like that. There's so much light being beamed at Earth, and we're coming up with our own light, that the negative beings or beings from other planet, star systems, whatever, don't have the power that they used to have. Is that true?
There is a circle of thought that talks about that the ascension is not just going to be about everybody rising up and going to a wonderful new place, that there's going to be people that aren't going to go. And I think the polarization, the more negative ones are going to stay with the people that don't go, whereas the people that do go are going to have their own sort of contacts or sources or whatever. I think there's going to be a pulling apart of the duality to some degree. And I think you're going to find the people that are not ready to ascend or are not ready to move on then that direction are going to have more of the, shall we say, the forces that, are trying to put things down.
Well,
I'm having a hard time pulling my words right now.
Okay, so my question is that same Earth, only the ones that can't go. I mean, I think Earth has changed density.
I know. A lot of people are saying that, but what I'm hearing in my head is a little bit different. That there's actually going to be it's going to be like a pulling apart where there's going to be sort of a negative. I hate to say the word negative because that's not right.
Off the track.
Yeah, because because there's no judgment call if you don't want to go or don't want to ascend. So what if you need more time in this level to experience whatever it is you need to experience? There's no badness to that. There's no, there's nothing shameful about that in any way. I just think that some people are not going to ascend. There's going to be another place that's going to be sort of interdimensional. There are, Bashar talks about that too, and other entities talk about that more than one planet can exist in the same space. They're just in different dimensions.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get the other thing is at least Royal talks about it's probably going to take us around 2,000 years to move fully into fourth density.
Right. Yeah.
So Earth is there, but we're the ones that have to
Right.
catch up.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of that going on that people do need to get caught up, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of people that are ready to shift. And there's a lot of
Yeah,
people
all of
that
us.
need to go too.
And
Yeah.
I'm damn tired of waiting for it.
I know. So I feel sometimes too.
It's get her done.
I know. I'm ready.